I really appreciate people who correct me because without them, I might have been repeating mistakes for a long time. With this amazing thought, a very good morning to all my dear students. I hope that you all are in good health. This is Shreya Jadhav welcoming you all to my e-learning channel. And today we are going to do English Grade 10 Chapter 8 Midgebill the Otter, written by Gavin Maxwell. So before starting the reading and explanation of the chapter, let us know something about the author. Gavin Maxwell, born 15 July 1914, died 7 September 1969, was a Scottish naturalist and author, best known for his non-fiction writing and his work with otters. He wrote the book Ring of Bright Water about the hove he had brought an otter back from Iraq and raised in Scotland. The otter was previously unknown subspecies which was subsequently named after Maxwell. Introduction for answer. Dear students, always remember that whenever you write down your answers for exams, start with introduction. This creates a really good impact. So here it is. Prose name Midgebill the Otter. Author's name Gavin Maxwell. Genre short story. Summary. Gavin Maxwell in his story tells us about how he has adopted a new pet, otter, and his journey with him. So now we will go through the summary of the story and then we shall start with the reading and explanation of the chapter. The writer, Gavin Maxwell's dog, Johnny, died in his Scottish home in Camusferna. The writer was too sad to think of keeping a dog again. However, when he had travelled to Iraq in 1956, he thought of keeping an otter as a pet. A friend told him that he could get one from the Tigris marshes. Otters were as common as mosquitoes in that region and were often tamed by the Arabs. Maxwell went to Basra to collect his mail. His friend, who was with him, received a mail and left. The author's mail arrived only after 5 days, after he cabled to England and booked a call. When he took his mail to his bedroom to read, he found that squatting on the floor were 2 Arabs. They had a sack which was squirming with an otter in it. The writer named him Midgebill, which he likely used to call Midge. The otter was a small, medievally conceived dragon. He had symmetrically pointed scales of mud on him, and his soft velvet fur, like that of a chocolate-brown mole, was visible at some places. The writer took almost another month to remove the mud on his pet otter to see his true colors. The zoologist named the otter Lutrogale perspecticula maxwelli or Maxwell's otter. Midgebill was neither hostile nor friendly the first day. He was aloof and indifferent, choosing to sleep on the floor far away from the narrator's bed. On the second night, Mijbil came to the narrator's bed in small hours and remained asleep in the crook of his knees till the servant brought tea in the morning. During the day, he started getting used to his surroundings and loved his half an hour in the bathroom, where he shot up and down in the bathtub. He loved to splash around the study water. 2 days later, when the narrator entered his bedroom, Mijbil escaped to the bathroom and tried to get up on the end of the bathtub and tried to open the chromium tapes with his paws. If he couldn't open the tape, he would be annoyed. Mijbil would respond when the narrator called out his name. He loved to play with a rubber ball and marbles. The narrator had to bring Midge from Basra to Chemosfernia in Scotland, but he had a problem as the British Airlines would not permit him to fly with Mijbil. He had to book a flight to Paris and then another one to London. He had to put Midge into a box which was not more than 18-inch square and carry him on the floor near his feet in the aircraft. After returning from his meal, the narrator found Midge exhausted and blood spattered in the box as he was trying to come out. He put Midge back into the box and reached the airport with a driver who literally drove very fast through the streets of Basra. It seemed the aircraft was just waiting for him. He put the box containing Midge over some newspapers near his seat, which was in the extreme front. He gave the parcel of fish meant for Midge to the air hostess to keep in a cool place. The air hostess was taken into confidence and she suggested that the narrator could keep his pet on his knee. The pet otter disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. People screamed and a woman stood up on her seat calling Midge a rat. The narrator dived to catch Midge, who was disappearing beneath the legs of a fat white turbaned Indian, but couldn't catch him, ended up with fur on his face. The air hostess brought Midge back to the narrator. The writer remained in London for nearly a month, where Mijbil would play with toys, ping pongs, balls, and marbles. The narrator also took him for walks on the street, on as a lead as if he were a dog. Mijbil developed some compulsive habits like small children. So, while walking on the street, he used to do touching some pillars of the iron railing, placing their feet on the center of each paving block, etc. Opposite to narrator's flat was a single-storied primary school, and along its frontage ran a low wall of 2 feet height. Midge would jump on to the wall and gallop it full 30 yards with the staff and pupils watching him. The average Londoner failed to recognize Mijbil as an otter because he belongs to a comparatively small group of animals called mustelines. Some said he was a baby seal, walrus, squirrel, hippo, beaver, bear cub, leopard, etc. Once a laborer stopped his digging and stared at Mijbil and asked the writer what was the animal with him supposed to be. So this is all about a small summary of the chapter. Now we shall proceed with the reading and explanation of the same. Early in the New York in 1956, I traveled to the southern Iraq. By then, it had crossed my mind that I should like to keep an otter instead of a dog. And then, Chemosferna ringed by water a stone's throw from its door would be an eminently suitable spot for this experiment. When I casually mentioned this to a friend, he as casually replied that I had better get one in the Tigris marshes. From there, they were as common as mosquitoes and were often tamed by the Arabs. We were going to Basra to a consultant general to collect and answer our mail from Europe. At that consulate general, we found that my friend's mail had arrived, but that mine had not. I cabled to England, and when 3 days later nothing had happened, I tried to telephone. The call had to be booked 24 hours in advance. On the first day, the line was out of order. On the second, the exchange was closed for the religious holidays. On the third day, there was another breakdown. My friend left, and I arranged to meet him in weeks' time. 5 days later, my mail arrived. I carried it to my bedroom to read. And there, squatting on the floor, were 2 Arabs. Beside them lay a sack that squirmed from time to time. They handed me a note from my friend. Here's your otter. So basically, previously the author had a dog with him, a pet dog. But somehow, unfortunately, he died. And because of all these things, he was very upset. And then he decided that at initial stage, he thought he didn't wanted any sort of pet with him, because then that emotionally the person would get more connected to it. So he then decided to keep an otter. Now his friend casually, they both were having an exchange of conversation at that time duration. He told that he wanted to keep otter as a pet. He was waiting for some work, some mail to come, some letters to be posted and delivered. It took almost 5 days to come. And by that time duration, the otter had actually been gifted by his friend. With the opening of that sack began a phase of my life that has not yet ended, and may, for all I know, not end before I do. It is in fact the theldrome to otters and otter fixation that I have since found to be shared by most other people who have ever owed me one. The creature that emerged from the sack on to the spacious tiled floor of the consulate bedroom resembled most of all a very small, medievally conceived dragon. From the head to the tip of the tail, he was coated with symmetrically pointed scales of mud armor, between whose tips was visible a soft velvet fur like that of a chocolate brown mole. He shook himself, and I half expected a cloud of dust. But in fact it was not for another month. I had to manage to remove the last mud and see the otter as it were in his true colors. So now eventually what happened, that the writer named the otter as Mijbil. The otter was a small, medievally conceived, looked like a dragon. He had symmetrical pointed scales of mud on him, and his soft velvet fur like that of a chocolate brown mole, which was visible at some places. The writer took almost another month to remove the mud on his pet otter to see his true colors. Mitchbill, as I called the otter, was in fact of the race previously unknown to science, and was at a length Christianized by zoologists as Lutrogel perspicilla maxwelli, or Maxwell's otter. For the first 24 hours, Mitchell was neither hostile nor friendly. He was simply aloof and indifferent, choosing to sleep on the floor as far from my bed as possible. The second night, Mitchell came on to my bed in small hours and remained asleep in the crook of my knees until the servant brought tea in the morning. And during the day, he began to lose his appetite and take a keen, much too keen, interest in his surroundings. I made a body belt for him and took him on a lead to the bathroom, where for half an hour he went wild with joy in the water, plunging and rolling in it, shouting out up and down the length of the bathtub underwater, and making enough slosh and splash for a hippo. This, I was to learn, is the characteristics of otter, where drop of water must be, so to speak, extended and spread about to the place. A bowl must be at once be overturned, or if it will not be overturned, he set in and splashed until it overflows. Water must be kept in on the move and made to do things. When static, it was wasted and provoking. So now, eventually, the zoologist named the otter as Lutrogel persectia maxwell, or Maxwell's otter. Mitchell was neither hostile nor friendly the first day. He wanted to be aloof and was indifferent, choosing to sleep on the floor far away from the narrator's bed. On the second night, Mitchell came to the narrator's bed in the small hours and remained asleep in the crook of his knees till the servant brought tea in the morning. During the day, he started getting used to his surroundings and loved his half an hour in the bathroom, where he shot up and down in the bathtub. He loved to splash around the study water. 2 days later, Mitchell escaped from my bedroom as I entered it, and I turned to see his tail disappearing around the bend of the corridor that led to the bathroom. By the time I got there, he was up on the end of the bathtub and fumbling at the chromium tape with his paws. I watched, amazed. In less than a minute, he had turned the tape far enough to produce the trickle of water, and after a moment or two, achieved the full flow. He had been lucky to turn the tape the right way. On later occasions, he would sometimes screw it up still tighter, chittering and with irritation and disappointment at the tape's failure to cooperate. Very soon, Midge could follow me without a lead and come to me when I called his name. He spent most of his time in play. He spent hours shuffling a rubber ball round the room like a four-footed soccer player, using all 4 feet to dribble the ball. And he could also throw it with a powerful flick of the neck to a surprising height and distance. But the real play of an otter is when he lies on his back and juggles with small objects between his paws. Marbles were Mid's favorite toys for his pastime. He would lie on his back, rolling 2 or more of them up and down his side, fat belly, without ever dropping one on the floor. So he always used to have a really good time. 2 days later, when the narrator entered his bedroom, Mitchell escaped to the bathroom and tried to get up on the end of the bathtub and tried to open the chromium tapes with his paws. If he couldn't open the tape, he would be annoyed. Mitchell would respond when the narrator called out his name. He loved to play with a rubber ball and marbles. It was his favorite. The days passed peacefully at Basra, but I dreaded the prospect of transporting Midge to England and to California. The British airline to London would not fly animals, so I booked a flight to Paris on another airline, and from there to London. The airline insisted that Midge should be packed into a box and not more than 18 inches of square to be carried on the floor at my feet. I had a box made, and an hour before we started, I put Midge into the box so that he would become accustomed to it, and left for a hurried meal. When I returned, there was an appealing spectacle. There was a complete silence from the box, but from its air holes and chinks around the lid, blood that trickled and dried. I whipped off the lock and tore open the lid, and Midge, exhausted, the blood spattered, whiffed, and caught at my legs. He had to torn the lining of the box to shreds. When I removed the last of it so that there was no cutting edges left, it was just 10 minutes until the time of the flight, and the airport was 5 miles distant. I put the miserable Midge back into the box, holding down the lid with my hand. I sat in the back of the car with the box beside me as the driver tore through the streets of Basra like a ricocheting bullet. The aircraft was waiting to take off. I was rushed through it, but was infuriated officials. Luckily, the seat booked for me was in the extreme front. I covered the floor around my feet with newspapers, rang for the air hostess, and gave her the parcel of the fish, which was for Midge, to keep in a cool place. I took her into my confidence about the event of the last half an hour. I have retained the most profound admiration for that air hostess. She was the very queen of her kind. She suggested that I might prefer to have my pet on my knees, and I could have kissed her hand in depth of my gratitude. But not knowing otters, I was quite unprepared for that following. So eventually what happened? The narrator had to bring Midge from Basra to California in Scotland. But he had a problem as British Airlines would not permit him to fly with Mitchell. He had to book a flight to Paris and then another one to London. He had to put Midge into a box which was not more than 18 inches square and carry him on the floor near his feet in the aircraft. After returning from his meal, the narrator found Mitchell exhausted and blood spattered in the box as he was trying to come out. He put Midge back into the box and reached the airport with a driver who literally drove very fast through the streets of Basra. It seemed the aircraft was just waiting for him. He put the box containing Midge over some newspaper near his seat, which was in the extreme front. He gave the parcel of fish meant for Midge to the air hostess to keep in a cool place. The air hostess was taken into confidence, and she suggested that the narrator could keep his pet on his knees. The pet otter was a really special one. Midge was out of the box in a flash. He disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. There were squeaks and cheers of a woman stood up on the seat, screaming out, "A rat, a rat!" I caught sight of Midge's tail disappearing beneath the legs of the pottery white turbaned Indian. Diving for it, I missed, but found my face covered with curry. Perhaps, said the air hostess with the most charming smile, it would be better if you resumed your seat and I'll find the animal and bring it to you. I returned to my seat. I was craning my neck, trying to follow the hunt, when suddenly I heard from my feet a distressed chitter of recognition and welcome. And Mitch bounded on to my knee and began to nuzzle my face and neck. Midge and I remained in London for nearly a month. He would play with ours with a selection of the toys, ping pong balls, marbles, rubber, fruit, and turpine shell that I had brought back from his native marshes. With the ping pong ball, he invented a game of his own, which could keep him engrossed for up to half an hour at a time. A suitcase that I had taken to Iraq had become damaged on the journey, so that the lid, when closed, remained at a slope from one end to the other. Mitch discovered that if he placed the ball at the high end, it would run down the length of the suitcase. He would dash around to the auto and the other end of ambush its arrival, hide from it, crouching to the spring up and take it by surprise, grab it and trot off with the high end once more. So, how Mitchell? No, the writer remained in London for nearly a month. And at that time duration, it was a time where Mitchell would play with his toys and ping pong balls and marbles. The narrator also took him for walks on the street, which on a lead, and if as if he was a dog. And it was very surprising for other people. And Mitchell developed some compulsive habits like children, like walking on the street. He used to have some particular habit of touching some pillars and iron railings and placing their feet on the center of each paving block. So for today's video, we are keeping till here. In the next video, in part 2, we'll be completing the chapter along with the summary back. So I hope that you all have understood the chapter till here. Thank you for watching and have a nice day, everyone.